file is in the assembly info shared under solution items up here. And then you just hit save. And then you push any changes that you have. You guys know that stuff. Push. Pull, then push. Then I just test it, make sure everything's working. I have it on release. All right, it launches, it's in 73, cool. Then I go to Atlas 3 and I publish it, and settings I use are just, it's in .NET, .NET 6 Windows, self-contained, 64-bit, and then you can change the publish directory to whatever you want, but this is what it is on my computer. But these are all the other settings that you need. Then I just publish it to that folder. And now it's done. And so then I have created a utility application that allows to package the files in a similar way that NSYS would. So whenever you run, Tyler, you're familiar with running NSYS scripts, right?
Yes.
Yeah, it's just like that configuration. So you in this utility application I've created for making deploys, there's a configuration file. This under here under file configuration, this text file here. And in it, you can specify what files you want to include in the builds. You won't need to change this for Atlas. This is already set up. But basically, you can specify specific files. You can denote file extensions you want to include if there's a lot of them. And then you can also specify directories using this /r. And it will include all of these directories in the zip file.
Could I get a copy of that for doing like a RMS and WBIS?
Of this thing? Yes, and it's on GitHub too. Just ask Chris to add you to the project.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
Yeah, then I can just make an RMS branch or
exactly. Well,
whatever.
no, actually, you can literally. It's not just for Atlas. It's generic. So as you can see here, it's configured for my published directory. So it takes these files from this text file that's been configured, and then it creates a zip file that is whose name is a combination of these two things right here. So we're on version 3.1.73, and then in here over on the side you include patch notes. Version 3.1.73. Test stuff. And then you just hit package, and it only takes a few seconds.
I have a question about the text file there.
Go ahead.
So it's the /r for including directories, correct?
Yes.
So will that overwrite a directory that already exists?
No, it just creates, it just copies it to the zip file, and I'll show you here in a second. So hang on just a moment. And the place that this gets put in is in app data under Alpine deploy tool. And as you can see here are our files that just got created as a result of this process. So this deploy tool, it creates 3 files. It creates the version info, that is just what's in this text box here. And that's what the user will see when they are alerted that there's an update. This is the text file that that they'll be reading. And then in here are all of the files packaged up. And as you can see, to answer your question, Tyler, these are what the directories look like from the publish folder.
I guess what I mean is when then someone installs this update, anything that's included in that zip file gets overwritten.
That's yes. Anything.
Okay, perfect.
Anything in the zip file when it pulls the update, it will overwrite anything that the user has on their machine. And the way that it does that is the installer will look at this hash file on AWS, and it will compare the file hashes on AWS to the user's local file hashes. And any files that are different on AWS, it will pull those individual files, and I'll show you that in a moment. So yeah, now we'll get into now that these are all created, we'll get into the structure of what these deploys look like. So in here I have what is an unzipped version of this zip file here. It's unzipped, and so we're going to unzip it again. I'm going to delete all this stuff. I'm going to zip all this stuff here. And the reason why I do this is because there are some files that Visual Studio creates that we don't necessarily need for a build, but what I've configured is all the files that Atlas needs to run. So I'll extract here. Then I'll get rid of the zip file. Out there. Then you go to AWS, and you guys might have to have Justin set you up with an account with permissions to access this, because we've tightened security on AWS. But basically, all you will need is S3 access. So this is on Amazon S3, and inside here there are buckets, and which are basically folders for all, directories for all intensive purposes. They just call them buckets. So this is a test bucket that I've set up. This isn't what it will actually look like, but inside here, this is what the individual file bucket looks like. So there's two files here. There's one folder and one file, the hash data, and then the application files. And this is just well, I didn't unzip all this stuff, but I'll give you guys a real example. I'll show you what this actually looks like. So this is what, and you've got this too, Tyler. You've got in RMS, you've got the individual installation files here, and then a hash data file. And just like that, in Atlas, we have an app file, we have app files and hash data. And this is for an actual deployed version of Atlas. This is what it will end up looking like. And basically, all you'll do in order to deploy that, and I'll do this in a test bucket to show you. To install this stuff, you just go to the place where you unzipped all your zip files, Control A, and you can just drag all this stuff in here. And I'm not going to.
That's into the app data folder.
Yeah, the app files folder. And that's what it will look like. And so I'm not gonna do this right now because it takes like 30 minutes sometimes. It takes a very long time to upload all these files individually. Oh, I forgot one important step. So before you do that, you will delete both of these files that are existing for the previous version. So in the previous version, you'll like when you go to make an update, these will be for the previous version, and you'll want to delete those before going ahead and deploying the update. Once that's done, then you will recreate the app files folder. And it's got to be named just so. And once that's created, then you would go in here, upload all of the files, and we'll just pretend like they're all updated. We'll just pretend like we've just uploaded the contents of this entire folder. But that's what you'll do is you'll go in here, you'll drag all these in, and then you'll go and you'll click update or upload, and it will upload all those individual files. And once that's done, you will go to your build bucket, and there's an individual build bucket for RMS and Atlas. Atlas's lives in SPI transfer because that's what we called it back when we started doing this. And you will and the structure will look exactly like this. And there will be only one directory here. There will only be builds, and then beneath it there will be a bunch of build folders that are just named the version number, nothing else. And it has to be that way so that it can compare the file name against the parent directory and then find the version info text that goes with it. And yes, so you would, let me show you what that looks like in the test bucket. Or oops. Oh, actually, this is a build test build. Okay, so after you've uploaded all the individual files, you would go and you would put the whole build, the zip file that users would download if they didn't have Atlas on their machine already. And you create that file, name the version number, and then inside here, you will put, oops, wrong folder. You will put the zip file and the version info in here, and then hit upload. And this goes pretty quick because it's just a single file. Something else to keep an eye on, and I've seen it happen just like once. Sometimes it can fail to upload files, especially when when there's a lot of files that you're uploading. So just keep an eye out to make sure that everything's successfully uploaded. If it didn't, then just whatever file failed to upload, just try uploading it again. That normally works. But everything worked this time, so the update is deployed. At this point, the user will, if they were to start up Atlas or if they were to check for an update, they would see that an update is available. But it won't try to pull individual missing files unless the hash file is present in the individual files folder. So until this file exists with the app files folder and all of the files therein, it won't try to pull any of those individual files. It will just instead pull the entire update. So what you need to do is go back here, and this is the last step, and then you just upload that hash file into the folder that the app files folder lives in too, so that it looks like this. And that should be just about it. Let me see, I have some other notes here that I want to include. Yeah, it's important that the build bucket is its own bucket, just because of the way of the structure of the way that the updater checks for updates. It looks here, and then it compares this version number against the application version number. And if this is more current than what the user has on their machine, then it will alert the user that an update is available. And yeah, this structure has to be maintained for now, unfortunately. But this is the way it just has to look. And what else? Version info file must be, yeah, version info file has to be included with the build. So filling out this little box right here is pretty important. It's just for including stuff that you've changed in your build. And
can you go back to that build file?
The build file, yeah.
Yeah. So do we need an exe in there too, or does it just need to be the zip and the version info?
That's a good question, and the answer is no. You do not. You do not need the exe anymore.
Okay,
but
so we just need the zip and the version info.
correct. I'm actually, and I let Chess know this too. I'm leaving this. I'd like to leave this 3.1.58 version on here, so that because there might be, and I can't confirm this for sure, but there might be legacy users with an older version of the updater that looks for an exe instead of a zip file. So I've been including an exe with all of my builds because I just didn't want anybody to get left behind. But it's time to move on. So the zip files and version info text are all that you need for these build files.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So I do need to figure out where the RMS stuff is in there, but
Yeah,
how would I then
I
go about setting up new folders for when it's time for WBIS?
Okay, so you can use for the individual files, you can use Alpine-LIS app files. We created this with the express purpose of just having RMS. We've got RMS and Atlas in here, and inside of all this, also there's this requested zip files. These files are a product of a Lambda function that I created for zipping up requested files for the user so that they're not downloading individual files. It will instead download this output zip and give it to the user. And this file contains any files that they're missing that would be necessary to bring their version of Atlas up to date.
And so in this Alpine-LIS app files, that's where we're going to have another folder where then the hash file and the zip live.
Yeah. So, for example, we could create it right now. You said WBIS?
Yeah, WBIS2.
BIS2. All right. Let's do that. Boom. Okay. So that folder's created, and it would look just like we have for RMS. It would be the same thing.
Perfect.
Only there's no hash file or anything yet, but you'd create, like an app files folder. Oh, and I should mention, in order for Atlas to see updates, we still are using some legacy code from the previous version of the updater, and that can be imported as a NuGet package. So if Tyler, if you needed to add this to WBIS, you would need to basically export this project from either Atlas or RMS. I believe
just kind of like how I'm currently doing it.
And the way that it works in Atlas, let me make sure of this. So it uses this class available versions to search for the versions on startup. It queries AWS. Yeah.
And RMS is currently set up with how it should be set up to update in this manner.
Yes, and
cool. So then I can just copy that to WBIS.
Correct. Yeah, I'm pretty sure you're using the standalone installer, right? Pretty sure.
I think so.
It would be this file right here. It's called Alpine-Installer. It's just a little application that's included with Atlas 3, and I think we have you set up on it. I'll come help you set it up if it's not.
All right. Yeah. Well, we can check that after this.
Okay. Sounds good. But yeah, this is this code.
Okay, it does include an Alpine installer in the installed version of RMS.
Okay, cool. Then yeah, you should be good. You're already set up. But yeah, this runs on startup, and it uses a couple legacy classes from the previous version in the installer, primarily available versions, to make sure that there's an update available. And so you'll probably have to import that as a NuGet package. But that's about it for the setup on the application side, and then you would just include that Alpine installer. Oh, okay. So yeah, now let's go over.
I've got a quick question about the build buckets. Is there a naming convention that needs to follow?
Not necessarily. Not for the bucket itself. You can name the bucket itself whatever you want. You can name it WBIS2 transfer, or however you want to name it.
Okay.
That all gets specified, and I'll get to that in a second with the installer. So the installer It has. I've made it to be just you configure the entire thing from this config file. You include it. It includes just like the the registry location that the application lives on. So when you're installing an application and you want to make a registry entry to save the install path for it, this is the location for it. So when you're configuring it, you will change this. And I've made configurations for this and RMS. I've got an RMS configuration for this as well. So to give you an example, you can literally save these configurations and swap them out and then make new builds of the installer. We'll go over that in a second. So yeah, the executable file name. I put notes on all these to make sure it was relatively easy to read. This is all the Postgres version tracking info. I think this is out of date, and I also think it's going to get deprecated. But yeah, this, if you were to do version tracking, this is where you would configure that information. And then there's also the bucket. So there's the whole update. There's the whole update download bucket, which is like we saw before, SBI transfer. That's this bucket right here. This is where all the builds live. And then there's also the individual files bucket, which we also took a look at. And this will be the same on RMS and probably WBIS, so this probably won't change. The app files path. So this would be where inside of this bucket the individual files live. And then the hash file path. So it lives right next to it. So actually, you can configure. You'd have a bit more of a range of being able to configure this to whatever you wanted. You have a bit more control here. It's this build bucket that we don't really have, that you don't really have much control over. And the reason why that is, the reason why it's not as specific is because the function I'm using to pull and look at objects on AWS doesn't include directories. It just includes all files in the bucket, which is really weird. So it, yeah, that's the reason why that is it doesn't allow me to seemingly target a single directory. It will just pull all files beneath it, and you can only do things like check parent directory, and it's odd. So anyway, and yeah, okay, so, and then this is the user configuration for the downloads user. So if you did create a new bucket, you'd have to give this user, and this user's name is, just a moment. Yes. This user is the update downloads user. So you would have to also give this user permissions to download from whatever new bucket that you created. Let me check that. And the way that you would do that is you go to IAM in Amazon, go to users, and we have update download user, and they have read-only updates permissions. So in here, you would modify the JSON for this, and here you can see the buckets that are included in its permissions. So if you created a new WBIS bucket, you would have to just add an entry for it in this user permissions JSON.
All right.
And okay, that should just about cover the updater. I'm trying to think of what else would need to be done. I feel like I'm missing a step. Let me think real quick. Oh, if you, okay, making an update. Let's do an installer build really quickly. So, same as the other thing. Start it in release mode, and it will function. And then you will close it. Then you will publish it. Same settings as before, only I'm publishing it here. So, okay, it's just in the, yeah, it's fine. Okay, publish. Then, okay, so it's done. Folder and File Explorer, bin, release, publish. And you can change this path to wherever you want. So it creates a standalone application that is the installer, but it's not compressed. It's not compressed right now. So we're going to go ahead and compress it. And the way that I've been doing this is I found this handy utility through the power of Google called iExpress. And iExpress allows you to create compressed executables. So I'm going to bring this thing's size down to about a third of what it is now. I have this set up already in this little debug file, and I can actually pass that to you as well. Or no, this sed file right here. It's a preset configuration for it. So because there's a bunch of steps to setting this up, and I'll include it or pass it to you. So then once that's done, create package, and then it runs it. But yeah, that's the way that you launch it. So whatever directory you want to run this thing on, you go into the browse address bar and you type iExpress. This is just one of those weird little utilities that's hidden in Windows. And it's for creating compressed executables.
And then we're just going to include that executable in our build.
Correct. So now it's done, and you can see it's a third of its original size, so that makes it easier to zip up and package into builds. And your end product will look like, oops, again, like this. And it's the same size because I didn't actually change anything, but yeah.
And is the Alpine installer on GitHub as well?
Yes, it is, and you can also ask Chris for that permissions to that archive or repository as well.
Great.
And what else? I'm going to pass you this installer sed file. So yeah, once again, just to
and that just needs to be within the file that I publish the installer to.
Not even necessarily. So when I'll do it again just to show you. iExpress is you type that in the search bar and it will automatically bring up this. You will open instead of saying create new self-extraction directive file, you'll say open existing self-extracting directive file, and this just contains a list of instructions on how it's configured because otherwise it's a lengthy process, but it will allow you to select that file wherever it lives on your computer. And you hit next and you create a package. And yeah, and that's all there is to it. And here I'll pass that to you too now. So that's a nice small file. Or, whoops. And well, I might as well include the Atlas and the RMS configurations for those two. The installer. Yeah, that's a bunch of configuration settings. And I think that about covers it. I've also made a video about how to deploy updates that Chris has posted on YouTube that goes over a lot of what I just talked about. And I'm probably going to make another video today that goes more in depth on how to configure the updater and and how to make these and how to make these updater builds if anything ever needs to be changed. Because yeah, when making a new version of the updater, let's say for like WBIS, you'll have to configure some of that stuff in the config file. And I think that's about it. Does anybody have any questions?
I don't think so.
All right. Like I said, you can review this on a video that Chris has posted. So yeah, just let me know for the next 2 days if you guys have any questions. Otherwise, good luck, guys.
I'll have questions 5 months from now when I try to deploy WBIS.
You know what? I probably would be okay with being. I'd probably be okay with being emailed about it too. Like, I'll probably discuss that with Chris. Like, if there's any huge questions, I don't know if I'll get to it immediately, but I'd be more than willing to help with anything that I've created. All right, guys. Well, good luck.
Great. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye.